When I was dying, I smiled and said to the emperor, "In the next life, I still want to be your empress and bear a child of our own." All right, I saw him as if he was speaking, but I couldn't hear clearly. Did he agree to my request? When I opened my eyes again, I had actually returned to the age of blooming youth. I waited to be betrothed to him again, but what came instead was the news that he would marry Jiang Yunyang, the daughter of the minister, so he had also been reborn. And it turned out he hadn't agreed after all. Later, on my wedding night with the heir of the manor, he stood outside the door all night. In my previous life, I became the crown princess. After the power struggles, the crown prince successfully ascended the throne, and I was named empress. Within the vast imperial palace, we still lived like an ordinary, loving couple. He painted my eyebrows and created art with me, flew paper kites together. And we disguised ourselves to stroll the markets during the Lantern Festival, making wishes. Until my death from illness, I had always been his most beloved queen, so when I found myself reborn back to the time before I was married, I thought this life was to make up for the regret of my previous life, where I fell ill due to scheming and died young. In this life, I will guard against schemes, take good care of my health, bear children, and grow old with him in love. When I heard that the crown prince had gone south to eliminate bandits and was also repairing embankments to control the floods, I suddenly realized that he had also been reborn. These were all events that would have occurred in the later years of our previous lives, yet he had already achieved these merits so early. Does that mean our marriage will also be brought forward? I waited with a heart full of joy, but what came was the crown prince requesting the emperor to grant him a marriage. To take Jiang Yunyang, the daughter of the Minister of Revenue, as his crown princess. Only then did I realize that during my final moments, he had not actually agreed to my words about being together again in the next life. At the banquet in Princess Yuanhua's estate, I saw Li Yuanzhao. Just like in the previous life, he was dressed in fine robes and a jade belt, exuding an air of noble elegance. The crowd rose to pay their respects. He waved a dismissive hand, his gaze seemingly falling upon me. Yet it swept past indifferently, without a single ripple of emotion, as if in this life, we were nothing but strangers. They were indeed strangers. A lovely young woman approached him. His expression softened instantly as he reached out to adjust the slightly askew hibiscus hairpin in her playful hairstyle. What a perfect pair they made. "Qingli, look at you and that Miss Jiang. You really do bear some resemblance," remarked a noble lady beside her. "There is some likeness. But what different fates you have. She is now the future crown princess, truly enviable," added the daughter of another minister. I heard that the crown prince and Miss Jiang met during the Lantern Festival. At the time, Miss Jiang didn't know he was the crown prince, and it wasn't until the marriage was decreed that the truth came out. What a delightful story. So that's how it was. So in the previous life, Li Yuanzhao happened to be away from the capital on business, and Jiang Yunyang encountered the newly appointed top scholar parading through the streets on horseback. The talented scholar and the beautiful lady soon became engaged and married. By the time Li Yuanzhao returned to the capital, he learned that the lady had already married someone else. Then he met me, who bore some resemblance to Jiang Yunyang. I also had a decent status as the legitimate daughter of the left censor-in-chief, so he married me. Later, I heard that Miss Jiang, while traveling in a carriage, encountered the sworn enemy of the top scholar's family and met her untimely demise. I remember there was one day when he was completely drunk, mumbling, if I had married you earlier, just a little earlier, would everything have been different?" I think I foolishly said at the time, "It's not too late now." He touched my face in a daze and said, Why isn't it her? Oh, Qingli, why are you crying?" The daughter of the Minister of Personnel asked in surprise. Something got in my eye. I lowered my head and wiped it away. So in this life, he married her earlier. I stepped away from the banquet, seeking a moment of quiet by the waterside pavilion, but unexpectedly ran into Li Yuanzhao and Jiang Yunyang. It was too late to avoid them. "Brother Crown Prince, I've often heard that this Miss Shen bears some resemblance to me. Do you think we look alike?" Jiang Yunyang asked in her clear, crisp voice. I froze. His clear, jade-like voice came through. "Yang is as delicate as a lotus flower, unique and incomparable to anyone else. Unlike brother Crown Prince, Jiang Yunyang blushed with embarrassment. I bent my knees slightly, then turned and left. I hid in the secluded spot of the rockery and took a hibiscus hairpin from my sleeve. I thought of the previous life, when he gave me many hibiscus-patterned clothes and hibiscus-themed jewelry. I thought he was giving me the things he himself liked. The truth was truly cruel. I came here today truly unwilling, wanting to ask him one question, but now it seems there is no need to ask any more. I raised my hand and threw the hibiscus hairpin in my hand into the pond. Just then, someone unexpectedly walked out from over there. The hairpin was thrown directly at the person. He wore a jade belt hook adorned with a gold-inlaid jade pendant, and his appearance was exceptionally handsome, the very image of a dandy. He caught it with one hand, glanced at the hairpin in his palm, then raised an eyebrow to look at my tear-streaked face. "I'm sorry." I quickly stood up and went over, reaching out to take the hairpin from his hand. I turned my head and finally threw it into the pond. Then I turned and walked away, but unexpectedly, as I hurried out from behind the rockery, I ran straight into someone. I was knocked back a step. The person instinctively reached out to grab me, but upon seeing me clearly, they let go and pulled their hand away, as if they didn't want to touch something dirty. I bumped into the rockery to steady myself, only to realize that the person before me was none other than Li Yuanzhao. I quickly curtsied. "Your Highness, please forgive me, I wasn't paying attention to the path." He waved his hand dismissively. I lowered my gaze and walked past him. The girl beside me glanced at me and walked past. "Brother Crown Prince, is she deliberately throwing herself at you?" Jiang Yunyan's voice carried displeasure toward me. "No matter what she does, she still has to see if she has the capability," Li Yuanzhao said coldly. In my ears, I faintly hear those calls of a Li. "My dear Li, everything can truly be faked. The tenderness of the past life was false. The coldness of this life is him." I never expected Jiang Yunyang to cause trouble for me because of this. I was feeding the fish by the inn's pond and had sent my maid, Chotao, to buy more fish feed. Unexpectedly, Jiang Yunyang arrived in a fury with her maids and servants in tow, and immediately swung a slap at me. I dodged in a panic. "Miss Jiang, what is the meaning of this?" Having missed her slap, she gritted her teeth in displeasure. "How shameless of you! How dare you try to seduce the Crown Prince just because you bear some resemblance to me? Miss Jiang, please do not speak nonsense. Last time, I merely accidentally bumped into the Crown Prince. There has been no other interaction between us," I said sternly. "Then why did the Crown Prince glance at you twice, and why did you just happen to bump into him? Don't you dare deny it, you shameless wretch." Jiang Yunyang stepped forward to grab me again. Frowning, I quickly pushed her away. She grabbed my sleeve, then glanced somewhere, and as if pushed by my hand, she fell into the river. I froze. This was bad. I was being set up. I quickly leaped into the river as well. "Miss." Autumn Peach hurried over from afar. "Gurgle, gurgle, help." Jiang Yunyang and I were calling for help in the river. "Yanga." Li Yuanzhao rushed over, jumped into the river, and swam toward Jiang Yunyang. Soon, he brought her ashore. I was still flailing and crawling around in the water. Li Yuanzhao ordered the guards to jump into the river and rescue me, but someone else was faster. I was soon brought ashore as well. Over there, Jiang Yunyang had already been covered with dry clothes by the Crown Prince to shield her drenched body. Meanwhile, the man who had helped me ashore also instructed his servant to quickly fetch clothes from the inn. He was the same person I had thrown the hairpin at that day. Crown Prince brother, it was her. She pushed me into the water, Jiang Yunyang tearfully accused. Li Yuanzhao's sharp eyes shot over, now that he is the Crown Prince and possesses the memories of a past emperor. His gaze is overwhelmingly intimidating. Even Chotao, who helped me up, shivered beside me. "I did not, Miss Jiang. You accidentally fell into the water, and I clearly jumped in to save you. Why would I push you into the river and then jump in myself?" I immediately refuted. My words firm and resolute. The man who had rescued me glanced at me again, a faint smile playing on his lips. Jiang Yunyang was taken aback, momentarily at a loss for words. It was you who pushed me into the water. Otherwise, why would I have fallen in for no reason? Brother Crown Prince, she's full of tricks. She deliberately ran into you again and again at Princess Yuanhua's banquet, and now she's pulling this stunt. Your Highness, please investigate clearly. As the daughter of the left censor-in-chief, I will not accept any baseless slander from anyone, I declared coldly and firmly. Li Yuanzhao swept a cold glance over me. This matter will be investigated later, however. As the daughter of the left censor-in-chief, you should also be mindful of your words and actions. Do not recklessly charge forward again. I pressed my lips together. He then turned his gentle gaze to the person in his arms. Younger, let me take you back to change your clothes first, so you don't catch a cold. Jiang Yunyang responded weakly. Li Yuanzhao lifted Jiang Yunyang into his arms and glanced at the man who had saved me from the water, Lord Xiao. It seems you have the leisure to rescue people as well. Lord Xiao rubbed his nose. How could I stand by and watch when a beautiful lady falls into the water? Li Yuanzhao gave a cold laugh, then carried Jiang Yunyang away with his guards following closely behind. Suddenly, I recalled my previous life when he went south and never returned. I was summoned to the palace by the imperial consort, who tried to force me to hand over a seal he had entrusted to me. The imperial consort had her people push me into an ice cellar. I held on stubbornly, refusing to yield, until I was on the brink of death. When I woke up, I was in the crown prince's residence, in the bedchamber, with Li Yuanzhao by my side. He gently caressed my face and said, "Sorry, I'm back late." I weakly shook my head and replied, "The seal is still here, they can't take it." He held me tightly in his arms and said, "Ali, I will clear everything as soon as possible and protect you from now on." It was also that time when I was left with a chronic illness, unable to conceive again. In my previous life, the man who promised to protect me has now rushed to another woman, protecting only her, I should say. The protection I received in my previous life was because of her too. It was all hers from the start. A large hand waved in front of my face. "Did you fall into the water and lose your mind?" I snapped back to reality and looked at the person in front of me, who had the appearance of a frivolous young master. "Thank you, Prince Xiao, for saving me," I said sincerely. He glanced at me and cleared his throat lightly. "Go change your clothes quickly." Then he turned and left. At the Shen residence, my father and mother were discussing the matter of arranging a marriage for me. I went out with Qiu Dao. At the entrance of a music hall, I saw the young master Xiao Yunjing, who was still lingering in the afterglow of the music, strolling out leisurely. "Young master," I stepped forward and called out. Xiao Yunjing looked at me with confusion, then suddenly realized, "Miss Shen, I really wanted to properly thank you for what happened last time," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You deliberately waited here to thank me. Could it be that you've taken a fancy to me?" I looked at him. Does young Master Xiao have someone in his heart? He froze for a moment, took 2 steps back, and hugged himself. "Miss Shen, what are you trying to do? If you don't have someone you love, would you be willing to marry me?" I explained my true intentions. Xiao Yunjing looked at me as if I had said something outrageous. "Miss Shen, how could you be so bold as to propose to a man like me?" The autumn peach beside me also looked at me in astonishment. "Lord Xiao, would you be willing to marry me?" I asked again with sincerity. Xiao Yunqing waved his hand dismissively. "I haven't had my fill of fun yet." My shoulders slumped. "Then I apologize for the disturbance." I turned and walked away. Wait, I'm willing." Xiao Yunqing hurriedly grabbed me in a panic. I turned around and looked at him in pleasant surprise. Xiao Yunjing stiffened and paused for a moment, the tips of his ears seeming to flush with a faint red. "But you should think it through. I'm famously known as a good-for-nothing playboy." I raised an eyebrow playfully, mimicking him. "Oh, really?" He paused, as if seen through and left with nowhere to hide, his voice stumbling. You can find out with just a casual inquiry." I shrugged. He stared at me intently. "Are you really willing to marry me?" I nodded, with utmost seriousness. His eyes seemed to shimmer with an unusual hue. The next day, the old lady of the Duke of Zhengguo's residence personally came to propose marriage. Such importance made father and mother eagerly and warmly receive her, for this was none other than the most esteemed Lady Xiao in the capital. But the reputation of this young Master Xiao truly was that of a reckless and unruly scoundrel. So father and mother hesitantly said they would ask for their daughter's opinion. I walked out directly and said, "Father, Mother, I am willing." Father and Mother were startled. Old Madame Xiao happily held my hand and said, "Good child." She placed the family heirloom jade bracelet on my wrist. After the Xiao family had left, my father looked at me and asked, "Leah, are you truly willing to marry the Xiao heir?" I nodded earnestly. "Leah, are you still making a rash decision because of the crown prince?" my mother said with concern. Hearing my mother's words, I gave a bitter smile. I remember when I was first reborn. I told my mother that I would marry the crown prince. My mother laughed and said that the crown prince wasn't someone you could just marry so easily. I said mysteriously, "You'll find out in the future." Then, I heard about the engagement between the crown prince and Jiang Yunyang. At that time, I was like a clown. Fortunately, my parents and Chotao wouldn't laugh at me. During those days, I was in a terrible mood, and my father and mother were deeply worried, seeing that I was fine. They finally felt relieved. I shook my head at that moment. The crown prince's affairs no longer concern me. My mother felt relieved but then grew worried again. Although the Duke of Zhengguo's estate is a first-class family, I'm afraid this young Master Xiao may not treat you well. Don't worry, father and mother. Young Master Xiao is actually a very good person. I had certainly seen Xiao Yunjing in my previous life. His frivolous demeanor was actually meant to put the current emperor at ease. The Duke of Zhengguo's mansion held too much prestige, and with the Duke himself leading 100,000 Xiao family troops guarding the border, the Xiao heir in the capital had to appear idle and unambitious. After that day's incident of falling into the water, Jiang Yunyang and I had developed a grudge against each other, and she will be the future crown princess, so I'm sure she has plenty of tricks waiting for me. So I need to find myself a marriage as soon as possible. A marriage that Li Yuanzhao would not allow Jiang Yunyang to interfere with, because the future Xiao Yuncheng will be Li Yuanzhao's greatest support in ascending the throne. Now with memories of his past life, Li Yuanzhao is even more determined to stabilize and protect the current Xiao Yunjing. The news of my engagement to Xiao Yunjing spread like wildfire. The prodigal young Master Xiao no longer indulged in cockfighting and gambling. Instead, he took his fiancée to savor all kinds of delicacies, a skill at which the prodigal young master excelled. It wasn't until I returned to the mansion that I learned the crown prince had paid a visit. I hadn't even made it to my own courtyard when I encountered him in the main yard. I casually bowed slightly and prepared to leave. "Miss Shen is going to marry the Xiao heir?" he asked in a calm voice. Since he was the crown prince, I had no choice but to stop and answer, "Yes." Li Yuanzhao scoffed. What does Miss Shen see in the young Master Xiao, his cockfighting and dog racing, or his frequent visits to the pleasure quarters? I looked at him with puzzled eyes. Young Master Xiao and I are well matched in social status and temperament. Last time he saved me, even His Highness the Crown Prince knows about it. I believe in his character. I don't understand why Your Highness would concern himself with my marriage to young Master Xiao. Li Yuanzhao looked at me with deep, intense eyes. Unless you know what Xiao Yunjing will become in the future. I continued to gaze at him with an innocent and bewildered expression. He paused for a moment. "If the crown prince has no further matters, I shall take my leave now." I then left with Chotao. May my husband, Yuan Zhao, live in eternal joy and good health, enjoying this prosperous era until his hair turns white. Li Yuanzhao suddenly recited a line from behind. I was taken aback. It was a wish I had written on a long burning lantern during the Lantern Festival in my previous life. He was testing whether I had also been reborn. I pretended to know nothing and calmly walked away. It was as if she didn't even hear his words, spoken with a tone of relief. "Well then, at least you've found a good place to settle." The Shangxi Festival outing was a popular tradition among the noble circles of Shangjing. In the outskirts, families set up tents, while outside, people enjoyed boating on the lake, admiring flowers, competing in poetry, practicing archery, or heading out for hunting. Xiao Yunjing took me on horseback to a secluded spot in the mountain forest. He took something out from his embrace. It was an apricot blossom hairpin. "Last time you lost a hibiscus hairpin, so I thought of finding you a new one. I think the apricot blossom hairpin suits you better." He carefully handed it over, afraid that I might refuse. I stood frozen as I took the apricot blossom hairpin from his hand. In a daze, I remembered the words spoken to me in my previous life by the newly appointed Duke, who remained undefeated and never married. Does Her Majesty the Empress prefer hibiscus? I had thought apricot blossoms were her favorite. In my past life, I had been just as stunned upon hearing those words. I have always preferred apricot blossoms. But Li Yuanzhao loved hibiscus and often gave me hibiscus accessories. Because I loved what he loved, I grew accustomed to using hibiscus. But why did Xiao Yunjing know in my previous life that I liked apricot blossoms? And in this life, he still so clearly gave me an apricot blossom hairpin. It was as if he had known me all along. What's wrong? Don't you like it? He asked nervously. I came back to my senses, holding the apricot blossom hairpin. I really like it, thank you. He breathed a sigh of relief. I knew my taste was top-notch. I smiled and handed it back to him. Put it on for me. His eyes brightened as he took the hairpin and gently placed it in my hair. I thought it was some young lovers having a secret rendezvous here, but it turns out to be young Master Xiao and Miss Shun, over there. Li Yuanzhao held Jiang Yunyang as they rode slowly on the same horse, and Jiang Yunyang spoke with a mocking tone. Your Highness, the Crown Prince. The two of them bowed in greeting. Li Yuanzhao held Jiang Yunyang as they dismounted from the horse. Brother Crown Prince, look at the hairpin on Miss Shun's head. It must have been a gift from the young master of the Xiao family. Do you think Miss Shun's apricot blossom hairpin is more beautiful, or the hibiscus hairpin you gave me? Jiang Yunyang leaned against Li Yuanzhao, speaking in a soft, delicate tone. Li Yuanzhao lifted his gaze to glance at the hairpin in my hair, then curled his lips and gently tapped her cute nose. Could it be that you think the one I gave you is inferior to someone else's? Of course not. The one Crown Prince sent is the most beautiful, Jiang Yunyang quickly said with a charming tone. Xiao Yunqing smiled faintly. Indeed, if Miss Jiang thinks the Crown Prince's is best, Qingli would also think mine is the finest. Li Yuanzhao suddenly glanced at me nonchalantly. Is that so, Miss Shun? My gaze remained calm. Naturally, I have always loved apricot blossoms, and Yunqing's gift is perfect. Li Yuanzhao slightly pursed his thin lips. Apricot blossoms can hardly compare to the charm of hibiscus. Before Jiang Yunyang could finish her words, suddenly, an arrow cut through the air. Xiao Yunjing pulled me aside with a swift turn to dodge. Li Yuanzhao also hurriedly moved Jiang Yunyang beside him out of the way, black-clad. Masked assailants closed in from all directions. Assassins, the Crown Prince's hidden guard shouted and charged out. Soon, the assassins and the hidden guards were locked in combat. Li Yuanzhao and Jiang Yunyang were protected by the guards. Xiao Yunjing shielded me closely, fending off countless attacks. But the assassins came prepared, numerous in number, all targeting Li Yuanzhao, as if determined to take his life. Jiang Yunyang, held in Li Yuanzhao's embrace, was so frightened that her body went limp. The guards protecting Li Yuanzhao were quickly overwhelmed. Facing the attacks, Li Yuanzhao found it difficult to both defend himself and hold on to Jiang Yunyang. I took the sword from the fallen guard and aimed it at the enemy. Xiao Yunjing held me close. I will protect you. I glanced at him. We'll do it together. I had experienced a few similar situations with Li Yuanzhao in my past life. While Xiao Yuncheng was facing the assassin attacking from the side, I saw the sword swinging toward Jiang Yunyang. I hurriedly stabbed from behind the assassin. The other assassins noticed me and swung their blades toward me. Li Yuanzhao raised his sword and deflected the blade coming at me. We exchanged a glance and moved in perfect sync. He wrapped an arm around me, lifting me into the air as he kicked toward the assassin. After he set me down, I smoothly slipped out of his embrace and crouched to pull the trembling Jiang Yunyang, who was huddled nearby, to safety. Over there, Xiao Yunjing had just forced the assassin back when he caught sight of the natural, seamless coordination between Li Yuanzhao and me. He froze for a moment, and when he saw a sword swinging toward me, he rushed over to shield me. We finally endured until the reinforcements arrived. With a dowry stretching 10 miles, I married into the Duke of Zhengguo's residence. On our wedding night, he lifted the red bridal veil. He stared at me, mesmerized. Beneath the wedding veil, I looked back at him. Just when I thought he might do something, He sat down beside me and spoke softly. Qingli, perhaps I am not the one in your heart. If you are unwilling, I will not touch you. In the future, if you wish to leave, I will give you a letter of divorce. I was taken aback, realizing that he had been acting strangely ever since the day we encountered the assassins. I reached out and took his hand. I have no one else in my heart. I am willing to marry you and wish to spend my life with you. He stared blankly at his hand, which was now covered by mine, then lifted his gaze to meet mine, his eyes growing increasingly bright. Perhaps it is you, who does not wish to walk this path with me, I said with a sense of loss, letting go of his hand. Qingli, he hurriedly grabbed my hand, looking at me anxiously. I do. I looked at him with a joyful smile. He looked dazed for a moment, then wrapped his arms around me and pressed me down beneath him. Then it settled. From now on, no matter who it is, I won't back down. I raised an eyebrow, as if afraid I might change my mind. He anxiously leaned in and kissed me. With a kiss that stirred deep emotions, he whispered softly, "My dear, I may have a bad reputation outside, but I have never been with anyone else. Please don't think I'm tainted." I smiled and wrapped my arms around his back. He kissed me passionately. The red bed curtains fell, and within the bridal chamber, the room was filled with tender intimacy. Outside the bridal chamber, a man in fine robes and a jade belt stood quietly, gazing at the swaying, enchanting red candles inside the room. Then, he resolutely walked away. The next day, I woke up exhausted. Xiao Yunjing held me close and kissed me, saying, "You've worked hard, my dear." I gave him a reproachful look. It's all because he doesn't know restraint. Xiao Yunqing, filled with joy, held me close, personally helping me dress and wash. Then he sat me down in front of the bronze mirror. I look into the bronze mirror, seeing the reflection of my face and Xiao Yunqing's. In a daze, I recall that in my past life, Li Yuanzhao and I also had many such moments. He loved to trace my eyebrows and would rest his head on my shoulder, playfully causing mischief while I did my makeup. I could only laugh and tell him it tickled, urging him to move away. If there was nothing else to do, he would get carried away with his antics, picking me up and carrying me back to the bed. In moments of passion, he would say, "Ali, I will search far and wide for renowned physicians and miraculous medicines. Will you stay by my side for a lifetime?" What I once mistook for deep affection was only because, in that lifetime, Jiang Yunyang had passed away early, and he needed me, a substitute, to remain by his side. "What are you thinking about?" A sudden voice snapped me out of my daze. I looked up at him with a smile. "I was thinking how happy I am that you're my husband. In this life, I am no longer the empress." Xiao Yunjing, pleased by my words, gave me a happy kiss. Xiao Yunjing was outside when a shadow guard approached him and reported in a low voice, "Last night, the crown prince stood outside the door for a long time before leaving." Xiao Yunjing paused, a thoughtful look in his eyes, and waved his hand dismissively. When he saw me stepping out the door, he regained his composure, smiled, and came forward to embrace me. "Be careful, my lady. I was too rough last night, so I'll be supporting you all day today." Xiao Yunjing, stop with your nonsense. At the autumn hunting grounds, the young masters from various noble families were freely moving about in the woods. The noble ladies and their families sat in small groups on the lawn. "Ali." Xiao Yunjing galloped his horse toward me, hearing the name. Li Yuanzhao over there froze for a moment before turning to look. Xiao Yunjing hastily dismounted, covered in sweat, holding a branch of apricot blossoms in his hands. "Ali, I saw the apricot blossoms on the hill were exceptionally beautiful, so I picked the finest ones. Do you think they look good?" He presented them to me as if offering a treasure. I frowned. "Isn't that apricot tree on the hill located by the steep cliff? Ahem. Don't you believe in your husband's skills?" He cozied up a bit closer, acting cute. "Do you like it or not?" I had no choice but to take it. "I like it." Seeing him drenched in sweat, I helplessly reached out to wipe it off for him. He grinned foolishly and lowered his head, letting me wipe the sweat from his face. The noble ladies and young masters around us cast their gazes over. Who would have thought that after marrying, young Master Xiao would become so henpecked? Exactly. He doesn't even hang out with us anymore. All he talks about is my wife this, my wife that, and never has time. The young masters who used to fool around with him clicked their tongues in disapproval. Afterwards, Xiao Yunjing continued roasting the wild game. He sat beside me, tearing off the most tender and flavorful parts to feed me. I ate with great relish, smiling as I reached out to wipe his mouth again. "Brother Crown Prince, what are you looking at?" Jiang Yunyang said with a hint of grievance. Li Yuanzhao calmly withdrew his gaze as usual. Apart from the Crown Prince's grand wedding and the return of the Duke of Zhengguo due to injury, the capital remained tranquil and uneventful. However, amidst this apparent calm, the war at the frontier erupted, with the Duke of Zhengguo no longer guarding the border. The Xiongnu army had already breached the city walls and launched a full-scale invasion. The emperor immediately ordered several military generals to proceed. After successive defeats, the only option was to request the Duke of Zhen to step in and suppress the situation. However, the Duke of Zhen's current physical condition no longer permitted it. That night, Xiao Yunjing wore a troubled expression. When resting, I leaned into his embrace. "Go, Xiao Yuncheng, I'll await your triumphant return." Xiao Yuncheng held me tightly, kissing me fervently. "I will return as soon as possible. Come back safely. I'll be waiting for you," I said softly. Xiao Yuncheng kissed me with tears of reluctance. The Crown Prince strongly recommended that Xiao Yunjing lead the expedition in his father's stead. After Xiao Yunjing defeated the Imperial Guard commander in the arena, the capital was thrown into an uproar. Soon after, Xiao Yunjing set out with the Xiao family army. Xiao Yunjing repelled the invading foreign enemies all the way, confronting them at the border. Time flew by, and in the final battle, he rode his horse straight to the enemy's imperial palace, forcing them to sign a surrender agreement promising not to invade for the next 30 years. On the day of his return, the entire city erupted in cheers. I stood on the city wall with my daughter Yang Yang, watching the man at the forefront, who carried an aura of awe-inspiring authority. Yet when he looked up and saw us, mother and daughter, he broke into the same familiar smile from 4 years ago. He rushed up the city wall, pulling me into a tight, urgent embrace. "Father," Yang Yang called out, tilting her head up. Yang Yang knew her father was a great general who defended the nation, a true hero. He bent down, picked Yang Yang up, held her in one arm, and kissed her on the cheek. "Ali, I'm back," I smiled and nodded, raising my hand to caress his weathered face. On the other side, Li Yuanzhao stood there. "Congratulations on your triumphant return." General Xiao Yunjing, who had returned just in time, had not only come back victorious, but the emperor was gravely ill, and the princes were already stirring with ambition. And now, Xiao Yunjing has returned with his troops. After a series of conspiracies and power struggles among various factions, Xiao Yunjing led his army to suppress the unrest. The emperor passed away, and the crown prince ascended the throne smoothly. Noble consorts were conferred, but the position of empress remained vacant. Xiao Yunjing surrendered his military tally. He specifically requested that the Xiao family army be renamed the Protective Feather Army. During the days when Xiao Yunjing was away at war, some events actually took place. Li Yuanzhao came to see me. He said that if I wished, I would still be his crown princess, his empress. I stared at him in disbelief and vomited right in front of him. I was pregnant. Something has happened to Jiang Yunyang. She caused the death of a pregnant concubine and was stripped of her position as crown princess. If I were to say Jiang Yunyang and I share 3 or 4 parts of resemblance, then that pregnant concubine bore 6 or 7 parts of resemblance to me. Ah, how laughable. The last time Li Yuanzhao and I met alone was to clarify everything. He would be the emperor in the future, and I didn't want any hidden troubles later on. I knelt before him, kneeling to the future emperor. "In my past life, I, Shen Qingli, belonged only to you, Li Yuanzhao. We were husband and wife for a lifetime, and we shared joy and happiness that cannot be changed. But in this new life, you have given up our bond, and I have found my own happiness. Fate was rewritten from the very beginning. Perhaps in the next life, the outcome will be different once again. So in this life, please let me go. In this life, I wish to grow old together with my husband." Xiao Yunjing, extra. Xiao Yunjing's previous life. From a young age, Xiao Yunjing had to pretend to be mischievous and was often punished by kneeling in the ancestral hall. Once, when he was so hungry his stomach rumbled, a little girl suddenly slipped in through the door. "Brother, what's wrong with you? Brother, are you bored? I'll keep you company. Brother, are you hungry? Here, have some almonds." The last almond, she reluctantly gave it to him. But as she watched him about to put it in his mouth, her round, rolling eyes stared longingly. He had no choice but to place the almond in her hand. Her eyes lit up, and she took a bite of the almond, then handed him the half covered in her saliva, with an innocent and naive expression. Tsk, he ate it. He heard that she was the Shun family girl who came to worship the Buddha with her grandfather. When he saw her again later, she had already grown into a young woman, no longer eating almonds, but instead breaking off apricot blossoms. He would often see her passing by from the upper floors of elegant restaurants and refined establishments. Occasionally, she would visit a jewelry shop, sometimes a pastry shop, and at other times an art gallery. While seemingly carefree, drinking and enjoying himself, his eyes would always drift toward that figure. She was actually betrothed to the crown prince. Tsk, off to the battlefield. Years later, he encountered her on the palace path. He felt a hint of confusion. Does Her Majesty the Empress like hibiscus? I thought her favorite flower was the apricot blossom. She was also taken aback. He couldn't help but wonder, were the Emperor and she truly as deeply in love as the rumors outside suggested? But no matter what, the Emperor had failed to protect her. Her body was broken. If it were him, could he have protected her? A life with no memories of a past one. A hibiscus hairpin was tossed onto the artificial rockery. Xiao Yunqing casually caught a glance and saw her face streaked with tears. A flicker of concern crossed his mind, but he raised an eyebrow in a roguish manner. Who had upset her like this? At the banquet, it seemed she had glanced at the crown prince a couple of times. Tsk, have you fallen for the crown prince? Feeling upset seeing someone by the crown prince's side, seeing her leap into the pond, he momentarily forgot to conceal his martial skills and rushed over. She's really amusing. Her body is so soft. Quickly cover her with clothes. But then she became lost in thought while staring at the crown prince. Do you like him that much? If the crown prince has no one in his heart, would you be willing to marry me? What? He was in a daze, thinking he had misheard. Was she serious? He swallowed hard. She was about to give up in despair. No, he is willing. The one in his heart is her. He just didn't expect the pie to fall right into his lap. That day, they encountered assassins. The rapport between her and the crown prince didn't seem to have formed overnight. Why? His shadow guards had investigated. She and the crown prince had never met before, but he wanted to possess her so badly. Even if marriage was just a temporary measure for her, at least they had gone through the ceremony. He was also afraid she would resent him, so he allowed her the freedom to leave. His heart was in turmoil, terrified that she might truly leave him for good. Her hand covered his, which was actually trembling. I have no one else in my heart. I am willing to marry you and wish to spend my life with you. Her heart was beating fiercely. He was hers. No one is allowed to take it away. Crown Prince, get lost. So beautiful everything. Beneath me, so beautiful everything. So satisfied, so happy. Damn it, that perverted crown prince, coming to stand like a tree stump, spying on him and his wife's intimate moments. Ignore him, after all, the wife is his, Xiao Yunqing's. He once asked her who would be suitable to rule the kingdom. She stated calmly that the crown prince would be a wise ruler. He stared at her in a daze, not at all feeling that his wife still held any affection for the crown prince. Then let Li Yuanzhao secure his throne and endure his boundless solitude. During the lunch break, Xiao Yunjing held the young woman close as they leaned against the couch, taking a fan and gently fanning her. Ali, I had a dream last night. What dream? She responded lazily and drowsily. I dreamed that you married the crown prince, but your health was very poor. I'm so sad. He nuzzled against her neck, his eyes moist as he buried his face in her shoulder, then quickly wiped it away. She raised her hand to caress his face. And what about you? I'll grow old alone. He pressed his face into her hand. It's just a dream. In this life, we are both doing well, she said softly. Yeah, he kissed her neck and whispered, So, was that a past life? Mom, Dad, Yang and Juju want to fly kites. Extra, Li Yuanzhao's past life. On the Lantern Festival day, a lively and spirited young girl bumped into Li Yuanzhao's arms. He had concealed his identity, watching her charming face with its playful and willful expression. Unfortunately, by the time he returned to the capital from his official duties, she had already married another. Although he was the crown prince, the undercurrents among the princes were turbulent, and his foundation was still weak. He could not afford to be trapped by love. At the banquet, the face of the censor's daughter left him dazed. Shen Qingli became his crown princess. Tragic news arrived. The girl in his heart had died just like that. Drunk and losing his composure, he uttered the words. Why wasn't it her? It's a pity that Shen Qingli is a bit foolish and hasn't noticed. He still cannot be troubled by emotions, burying them deep in his heart forever. He just increasingly wants Shen Qingli to wear the hibiscus hairpin, and he would be extremely gentle with her. She doesn't know that I am looking at another person through him. She gradually grew affectionate towards him because of his gentleness. Although she was a substitute, they still weathered many storms together. She endured countless schemes and suffering for his sake, assassination attempts, being thrown into an ice cellar, arson, and being taken hostage, and she remained as resolute as ever. Throughout the imperial years, he allowed her to maintain her position as empress, despite her lack of offspring. All because of that familiar face, he bestowed upon her all the tenderness he had been unable to give to that young girl from the Lantern Festival. She was lost, utterly and completely. So at the moment of death, she actually wished to be his queen again in the next life. Unfortunately, in his next life, he wanted to give it to the girl he had always kept in his heart, Li Yuanzhao. This life, he had truly been reborn. He first established his merits, then eagerly requested an imperial decree for marriage. In this life, he would finally possess the charming young maiden from the Lantern Festival. He also rewrote her fate of an early demise. When he saw Shen Qingli again, seated gracefully among the noble ladies, his heart remained unmoved, for by his side was already a lotus-like maiden. He gently fixed the hairpin for her, 2 chance encounters, and he always felt that Shen Qingli carried a trace of her former self from when she was the empress in her past life. Could it be that she has also been reborn? But no matter what it is, it has nothing to do with him anymore. The day of falling into the water, he habitually wanted to rush toward Shen Qingli. But he quickly came to his senses. This was no longer the past life, not the life where they stood together. In this life, the true protagonist had returned. Just seeing Shen Qingli being rescued by another man, her drenched body in another man's embrace, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of discomfort. Little did he expect that they would actually become engaged. The moment he learned the news, it felt as if he had been struck hard once again. Feeling somewhat dazed and suffocated. Shen Qingli is going to belong to someone else. Shen Qingli is truly going to belong to another man. That woman who was his for a lifetime in his past life is actually going to belong to another man. He thought, perhaps it had nothing to do with love, but rather something that was originally his. Even if he didn't want it, it was still his and shouldn't be given to someone else. Once again, he lost control and went to the Shen residence. He saw her indifferent expression and heard her firmly declare her mutual affection with Xiao Yunjing. He had once seen her shy and bashful demeanor. He always felt that in this lifetime, she was too indifferent when she saw him, even deliberately avoiding him on many occasions. He tested her, she heard it, yet she acted as if she hadn't. Ali, the most normal reaction should actually be to turn around in confusion and take a look, not to pretend you didn't hear it. Shen Qingli, she really has been reborn too. Never mind. Xiao Yuncheng, the future chief minister. In his previous life, he never married and retired early. In this life, it is fitting for Ali to marry him, and neither of them is at a disadvantage. Assassins attacked, they cooperated skillfully. In that moment, holding her body amidst the flashing blades, he too began to linger. After a dazed moment, he finally let go. On the day they were married, once again, he felt a sense of being overwhelmed. He has been standing outside their wedding chamber. Suddenly, he hopes for an unexpected turn of events. Shen Qingli might not be able to accept another man. She had called him husband for so many years. and she had blossomed completely in his embrace, with memories of her past life. How could she so peacefully marry another? She truly willingly married someone else. The candlelight flickered, swaying with a lifetime of tender passion. He stood there, inside, never once ceasing. Shen Qingli, she truly belongs to someone else now. A profound sense of emptiness left him feeling dazed. He shook his head and turned to leave. It's fine, no problem. Shen Qingli is just a substitute. He has a woman he truly wants. Once he gets the woman he truly wants, Shen Qingli will be cast aside. After all, he was the one who didn't want her. At the autumn hunt, Xiao Yunjing called her Ali. He, Li Yuanzhao, had called her Ali for a lifetime. Xiao Yunjing rushed toward her like that, and she gave him such a helpless, doting expression as she wiped the sweat from his brow, such intimacy and tenderness. That once belonged to him, that clearly once belonged to him. On the day of the grand wedding, he lifted the bridal veil and gazed upon that shy, delicate face, in a daze. He recalled the day of his grand wedding with Shen Qingli, that nervous, shy, yet earnest gaze fixed upon him. In his trance, all he could see were the images of Shen Qingli by his side. Everything at this moment had become utterly dull and tasteless. He suddenly realized, in the years of his past life, the one he was accustomed to, the one he desired, was Shen Qingli. What substitute, what beloved in his heart? The one before his eyes was clearly Shen Qingli. Xiao Yunqing has gone off to war. He couldn't help but entertain a wild thought. Could he take advantage of the situation? She is pregnant. His face was filled with sorrow. The child in her belly could have been his. They could have had a child of their own. At night, he held a woman who bore a 6 or 7 out of 10 resemblance to Shen Qingli, losing himself in intoxication. But this time, he clearly knew it was just a way to console himself. He had no desire for anything beyond giving, unlike his initial feelings for Shen Qingli. The concubine was actually harmed by Jiang Yunyang. He made proper arrangements for her family. He also dealt with Jiang Yunyang. They meant so little to him, stirring no emotions, yet the woman who had clearly sunk deep into his bones was the one he himself had given up. Shen Qingli, I regret it. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I am the cherished memory of everyone in the capital. The female lead firmly believed that the male lead, who had reached the age of 20 yet remained unmarried, was waiting for her to come of age. Because of this, no matter how handsome, elegant, or noble her suitors were, she turned them all away. But she waited and waited, only to receive the news that the male lead and I had exchanged betrothal letters. She went mad, resorting to any means to climb into his bed, and even arranged for all the guests to coincidentally witness the scene. Bound by reputation, he married her, and I, his fiancée, was oppressed by the powerful and driven out of the capital. At the 10-mile pavilion, a steady stream of people came to see me off. I looked at the female lead clinging tightly behind him and suddenly laughed. Forced to leave? Not necessarily. On the day I was driven out of the capital, I knew that one day, I would return with dignity. 3 years have passed in the blink of an eye. The invitation from the princess was handed to me by her maid. After reading it with lowered eyes, I dipped my brush in ink and wrote in reply, "Thank you for your concern, Princess. I will return to the capital soon and will surely attend the grand event." The flower appreciation banquet was held at the hibiscus pavilion of Princess Jiaha's estate. As soon as I stepped into the garden, the lively chatter and laughter suddenly fell silent. Countless pairs of eyes turned and focused on me in unison. In the next moment, those reserved or radiant figures surged forward like a tide, surrounding me from all sides. Sister Jiang, it really is Yaro Yaro who has returned, 3 years apart, and my sister's elegance surpasses even before. Their voices were like orioles and swallows, full of warmth and enthusiasm. What is the so-called white moonlight, if not merely that flawless, pristine moonlight in the hearts of noble sons? Of all the distinguished young ladies and daughters of military families in the capital, 8 or 9 out of 10 were once my bosom friends, with whom I shared countless intimate conversations. It's been a long time, my dear sisters. I smiled and nodded to each of them, my eyes gentle and soft. 3 years had passed. and the letters from Jiangnan arrived in thick bundles, each one filled with their constant concern, so many that it was impossible to reply to them all. Princess Jaha pushed through the crowd, stepped forward, and firmly grasped my hand. Her bright eyes instantly misted over, and she spoke in a choked, complaining tone. "Yao Yao, you heartless one, you've been gone for 3 whole years, and your messages have been so sparse. If I hadn't swallowed my pride and gone to invite you, I'm afraid you would have long forgotten us, your old friends from the capital." She took my hand and looked me up and down, her tone both scolding and delighted. "Let me have a good look at you. You've lost a little weight, but your whole aura is even more captivating than before." All around, voices of agreement rose, filled with sincere admiration. I gently patted her hand in return and said softly, "You've been so concerned for me, Princess. The mountains and roads are long, and letters are hard to send. That was my fault. But as soon as I received your invitation, I rushed back day and night." My gaze swept over the familiar faces, and my lips curved into a slight smile. "Besides, with the princess and all you sisters here in the capital, how could I ever dare to forget?" Just then, a faint stir came from the entrance. The lively atmosphere that had surrounded me moments before instantly cooled by a few degrees. The smiles on everyone's faces slightly stiffened, their gazes turning complex as they all looked in the same direction. The princess's grip on my hand tightened imperceptibly. She leaned closer to my ear, her voice lowered. "Yao Yao, do you know who else is at today's banquet?" Her words carried a hidden meaning as her gaze fell on the end of the path that had naturally cleared through the crowd. "I know, how could I not know?" The smile on my lips deepened as I looked toward Shenyanshuan at the door. And of course, there was also the one who had forced me to leave the capital back then. 3 years ago, I had just reached the age of 15, and my father was still the Vice Minister of Revenue. Although his official rank was not low, in the capital where the powerful and noble gathered, it was merely a middling position. Fortunately, my father had a reputation for integrity, and while our family background was not as prestigious as the top-ranking nobles, it was stable and respectable. Shenyanshuan was the heir of the Dingyuan Marquisate. He came from a noble background, possessed exceptional grace, and his appearance and demeanor were unmatched in the capital, making him the ideal match many young women dared not speak of openly. Among all the young masters from noble families, he was indeed the most outstanding one. At a spring banquet held in some mansion, amidst the lively clamor of the garden, with peach blossoms blooming in fiery splendor, he caught sight of me. I heard that he fell in love with me at first sight. After returning, he tossed and turned restlessly, and the very next day, he eagerly sent someone to inquire about me. Hearing of my reputation in the capital, he felt even more delighted. The young man's affection burned so fiercely it couldn't be hidden, nor was there any need to hide it. I merely gave him a faint smile, and a delicate blush spread across his jade-like face, even the tips of his ears tinged with the color of sunset clouds. He treated me with genuine sincerity and had even made solemn vows to me. "In this life, there is only Yao Yao for me, no one else." With both families being well matched in status and sharing mutual affection, the marriage was naturally settled. We quickly exchanged betrothal letters and completed the engagement ceremony, waiting only for an auspicious date to be chosen for the wedding. Yet this happy union had somehow displeased someone else. Qiu Shuizi is the legitimate daughter of the current Prime Minister. With the new emperor ascending the throne, Prime Minister Qiu's power has grown immensely, and she has been pampered like a precious jewel. She has been infatuated with Shenyanshuan for many years, stubbornly believing that his delay in marrying was because he was waiting for her to come of age. Upon learning of our engagement, years of obsession and resentment instantly drove her to lose her reason. She had completely lost her mind. At a banquet, she found her opportunity. She obtained a potent and dangerous secret medicine from the palace, and bribed a maid of the host family. She even used my name to lure Shenyanshuan, who was attending the banquet, to a secluded room. He had drunk some wine, and his mind was not entirely clear. Upon hearing that I had invited him, he entered that room without a second thought. She succeeded in her plan and became intimately involved with him. But that wasn't enough. She even went so far as to ruin her own reputation. Timing it perfectly, Someone deliberately led the full hall of guests to the door of that side room. At that moment, everyone was chatting and laughing when suddenly, ambiguous sounds were heard. The married women, who were already familiar with such matters, immediately changed their expressions. Everyone exchanged glances, and the host's face turned ashen with anger. At our own well-intended banquet, such filthy deeds have actually occurred. Several frivolous young masters, never ones to shy away from trouble, pushed open the door of the side room with mocking laughter. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Shen Yanxuan lay unconscious on the couch, while Qiu Xuezi's hair was disheveled, her gaze dazed and infatuated. The two were entangled in passionate intimacy, completely oblivious to the world around them, as if no one else existed. Ah! Someone's startled cry pierced the air. Exposing the identities of the two, a familiar girl first glanced at me with concern, her heart aching, unsure how to comfort me. Disgusting filth, you've sullied my eyes. The only daughter of the general's household, known for her fiery temper, let out a cold laugh at the sight and said with disgust, "What are you still standing there for? Fetch cold water and douse this shameless pair of dogs to wake them up." The servant immediately brought water and splashed it fiercely onto the entangled couple on the bed. Splash! The cold water poured over their heads, drenching the impassioned pair on the bed to the bone. Shen Yanxuan jolted all over, his muddled mind finally clearing. He abruptly looked up, took in the scene before him, and his face instantly darkened like ink. Qiu Xuezi timidly hid behind him, hurriedly pulling on her scattered clothes, her eyes brimming with tears, looking utterly pitiful. Shen Yanxuan clenched his fists, clearly realizing he had been set up, but as he glanced sideways and saw Qiu Xuezi's tear-streaked face, his heart softened slightly, probably thinking she was innocent too. With a touch of chivalry, he turned to shield her from the crowd's gaze. At that moment, he looked up and saw me in the crowd, his expression instantly changing. He hastily pushed Qiu Xuezi away and said urgently, "Yao Yao, I only came here because you said you wanted to see me. I am disappointed in my heart." Having committed such a disgraceful act, he not only failed to reflect on his own faults but his first reaction was to drag me into it, placing me in the eye of the storm. I took half a step back and interrupted him. "Be cautious with your words, young master. How important is a young woman's reputation? I have always adhered to the rules of propriety, although we are engaged, before the formal ceremony takes place. How could I be so shameless as to engage in such improper conduct?" He froze, as if stung by the coldness in my eyes. Qiu Xuezi, seeing this, had tears welling up in her eyes. "I was also lured here by someone." Shen Yanxuan frowned deeply and immediately said sternly, "Investigate. I want to see who dares to scheme against me." He spoke with certainty, but failed to notice the fleeting guilt in the eyes of the pitiful figure behind him. I kindly reminded them to get fully dressed first. The maid who led the way was quickly singled out. The maid knelt on the ground, scared out of her wits. "Speak, who sent you?" The maidservant stammered, but Qiu Xuezi kept glancing at me. She seemed to understand and frantically pointed at me. "It was her." I sneered. "Do you know who I am? Would I personally deliver my own fiancée to someone else's bed?" Princess Jiahe, seeing me being slandered, grew even more furious. Without waiting for anyone else to react, she immediately ordered, "Guards, give her 20 lashes, keep beating her until she tells the truth." The board had only fallen 3 or 5 times when the maid couldn't bear it any longer and cried out. "It was Miss Qiu. She told me to spread false news to lure the young master here. The medicine was also given by her." The entire hall erupted in an uproar. Qiu Xuezi's face turned deathly pale as she frantically looked toward Shen Yanxuan, only to find his gaze icy cold, without a trace of pity left. Qiu Xuezi was exposed too quickly, and the Qiu family had no time to cover it up. But the Qiu family was powerful, and although everyone knew the truth, no one dared to accuse her openly. Seeing that her scheme had been uncovered, Qiu Xuezi simply stopped pretending. With tearful eyes, she grabbed Shen Yanxuan's sleeve, her voice choked with sobs. "Brother Yanxuan, I just like you too much." Shen Yanxuan instinctively looked at me, as if seeking my understanding. Preposterous. Princess Jiahe could not stand such despicable methods. She said, "Miss Qiu, as the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister, you have actually resorted to such lowly actions. You have utterly disgraced the dignity of women. In the past, I saw you as willful and capricious, but today you've changed your nature. I thought you were frightened by this incident. But I never expected it was all your own doing. For the sake of a man, you would even disregard your own reputation. I have truly witnessed something remarkable today. Qiu Xuezi's face turned pale, and then she bit her lip in grievance, saying, "Why must the princess be so aggressive? I have also lost my innocence." Princess Jiahe, seeing her pitiful appearance, felt an inexplicable surge of anger rise within her. I calmed the furious princess and looked at Qiu Xuezi. Speaking slowly and deliberately, you bribed the maid, drugged and schemed, ruined someone's marriage, and now why put on this pitiful act? Shen Yanxuan, do you still think she is innocent? Shen Yanxuan was left speechless by the question. Seeing him like this, I closed my eyes for a moment, then turned to Princess Jiahe and the young lady of the Jiang family, nodding slightly in gratitude. Finally, I bowed to the master of the house. I deeply apologize for disturbing the peace of your esteemed residence today. The matter that follows has nothing to do with the Jiang family anymore. Farewell, Yao Yao. Shen Yanxuan grew anxious, stepping forward to try and stop me. Please, let me explain. I sidestepped to avoid his hand. Since you have already been intimate with someone else, you should take responsibility. Upon returning home, I told my father the whole story. My father was furious and immediately wrote a letter to return the betrothal gifts from the Shen family. Although the matter caused quite a stir, it was eventually suppressed. The maid died suddenly of a violent illness the very next day, leaving no other witnesses. To protect their daughter's reputation, the Qiu family pressured the Shen family, demanding that Shen Yanxuan marry Qiu Xuezi immediately. Qiu Xuezi got her wish and married Shen Yanxuan. Afterward, I too felt a chill run down my spine. Fortunately, she had drugged herself and hadn't thought to harm my reputation and ruin the marriage. At this point, I thought the matter had nothing to do with me anymore. Still, I couldn't help but feel disheartened that Shen Yanxuan had agreed to the marriage so easily. My once bright and noble fiancé had, in an instant, become mired in the mud, filthy and repulsive, leaving only disgust in my heart. I had long since cast him completely from my mind. But I never expected that I had underestimated the shamelessness of the Qiu family. That day, the eldest son of the Qiu family, who was known for his fine reputation, came to my door in person. He stood before me, his face bearing the aloof and noble restraint typical of a scion from an aristocratic family. "Miss Jiang, I've heard that your father has been handling a great deal of official business in the Ministry of Revenue lately, and it seems to be causing him some distress. My father's disciples and former subordinates are spread throughout the court and beyond. If you need any assistance, it would be but a small effort for me." My mind went blank, and my fingertips turned cold in an instant. His words were veiled, but I understood immediately. No wonder father has been frowning so often lately, locking himself in his study as soon as he returns home. With piles of official documents on his desk and a few more strands of white hair at his temples from worried, I asked him several times, but he only forced a smile and waved his hand. "It's nothing, just some official matters. You don't need to worry." Yao Yao, he has always been like this, bearing even the greatest difficulties on his own, never willing to add unnecessary worries to his family. So it was the Qiu family after all. With Qiu Xiong holding power and countless disciples under his influence, tripping up a mere vice minister of revenue was as easy as turning over his hand. But the Qiu family never expected that my father, out of deep love for his daughter, would withstand the pressure so resolutely and keep me completely in the dark. They finally shed their hypocritical facade and sent this gentleman to personally step in and carry out this act of coercion. The man before them was still spouting lofty words. "My sister's request is simple. She only wishes for some peace and happiness in the early days of her marriage. The capital is prosperous, but it is also noisy. I've heard that the Jiangnan region is rich and charming, with misty rains that are most nurturing. Why not move there, Miss Jiang, and change your state of mind? Of course, if the young lady insists on staying, given that your father is an upright official, I fear he will have to work even harder in the future. And it may be difficult for him to have a moment of peaceful rest. Otherwise, if you make a single misstep and implicate the entire family in prison, what should we do then? At this point, the threat was already glaringly obvious. Hearing this, I suddenly found it laughable. What wrong have I, Jiang Xiao, done? What wrong have my parents and family done? Our family merely arranged a marriage of equal social standing. Why must we suffer such an unjust calamity? Just because he, Qiu Shuesong, dotes on his sister, does that give him the right to frame and persecute others so shamelessly? I know what he fears. He fears that I will remain in the capital, like a thorn deeply embedded between his sister and her husband. He fears even more that my presence will constantly remind everyone in the capital of how his sister used underhanded means to secure this marriage. Yet, instead of making any amends, they dare to threaten me with my father's career and the safety of my entire family. Just to force me to leave my homeland. It was clearly his sister who had no sense of shame and forcibly took another woman's betrothed. I never even held a grudge against them. Yet the Qiu family, in their audacity, actually intended to drive me, the victim, out of the capital. I still held a sliver of hope in my heart. I refused to believe that, under the clear sky and at the feet of the Son of Heaven, the Qiu family could truly dominate everything and act without regard for law or justice. Suppressing the surging anger, I called for the servant and had him thrown out. When my father returned home and learned of this, he clapped his hands in approval, saying I had done the right thing. Yet, I still felt somewhat uneasy inside. Sure enough, the next day, when my father was on his way to court, the shaft of his carriage suddenly snapped. Father broke a leg and was helped back to the mansion by a servant, still forcing himself to comfort me. Fortunately, Father's bones were not shattered. And with a few months of proper rest, he would recover without issue. But how could a perfectly fine carriage suddenly fail? I felt a chill run through my entire body, as if I had fallen into an icy abyss. This is clearly a warning from the Qiu family. A few more pieces of bad news followed. I don't dare to gamble anymore. I can't afford to gamble with my father's future, let alone the lives of my entire family, if I don't leave. The Qiu family might truly go mad and bring ruin and death upon the Jiang family. That day, I went alone to find Qiu Shuesong. So, Miss Jiang, have you made up your mind? He still maintained that gentle and refined gentlemanly demeanor. I used almost all my strength to restrain the impulse to slap him. From childhood to adulthood, I was also raised with the doting affection of my family. I had never suffered such humiliation before. I was so angry that my whole body trembled. And tears uncontrollably streamed from the corners of my eyes. Burning rage consumed my entire being, and a seed of hatred began to sprout within my heart. I lifted my eyes and looked at Qiu Shuesong's hypocritical face. My knuckles turning white from clenching, I bit my lip hard and said, "Okay, I'll go." As the beauty shed tears, a flicker of pity flashed in the man's eyes, but then he remembered his younger sister at home, who had been weeping all day long, unable to find any joy. All my sister wants is to have that man all to herself. Such a humble wish, how could he, as her elder brother, bear not to fulfill it? He hardened his heart, delivered his final words, and turned to leave. Miss Jiang, if you must blame someone, blame yourself for not knowing your place and becoming engaged to the man my sister loves. That is your sin. Yao, Miss Jiang, it's been a while since we last met. A low, restrained voice interrupted my memories. I looked up to see Shen Yenshuan standing just 3 steps away. His eyes were filled with longing as he gazed upon the face he had dreamed of day and night. Young Master Shen, seeing me so distant, a pained expression crossed his brow. His Adam's apple bobbed slightly as if 1,000 words were stuck in his throat. My husband, a soft, slightly panicked voice cut in. Qiu Shuizi was seen hurrying over, lifting the hem of her skirt, and quickly linking arms with Shen Yenshuan. My lord. Why are you here? I've been looking for you for so long. She feigned intimacy, yet her gaze dared not meet Shen Yenshuan's eyes. Seeing him still staring at me in a daze, she finally followed his line of sight. The moment their eyes met, the color drained from her face, her eyes filled with disbelief and shock, and she immediately lowered her head as if scalded. I saw her fingers gripping Shen Yanxuan's sleeve, turning white at the knuckles. With no trace of the pride and boldness that once seemed ready to leap from the corners of her eyes and brows, Shen Yanxuan frowned slightly and calmly withdrew his hand. She forced a smile. "So Miss Jiang has returned to the capital," Princess Jiahe sneered, "the way the consort speaks. It's as if the capital has become some kind of dragon's den or tiger's lair, unable to tolerate Yao Yao. Lord Jiang is now the Minister of Revenue appointed by His Majesty. As the legitimate daughter of the minister, Yao Yao no longer needs to worry about certain people relying on their father's and brother's power to repeat their despicable and dirty tricks." Upon hearing this, several noble ladies nearby couldn't help but cover their lips and chuckle softly. Everyone knows that Qiu Xuezi's methods of marrying into the Marquis household were far from honorable, and she even used her family's influence to force me out of the capital. For this reason, Shen Yanxuan had been cold and distant toward her for many years. Even when someone publicly humiliated her, he would only watch indifferently, or even add fuel to the fire. If it weren't for the lingering prestige of the Qiu family, she would have long lost her position as the wife of the heir. I've heard that the wife of the heir is exceptionally skilled in the qin. Since today is such a rare gathering, why not grace us with a performance? A noble lady with whom I had some past history suddenly spoke up, a hint of mischief in her eyes. The proposal was immediately met with several malicious echoes of agreement. Qiu Xuezi's face turned deathly pale, feeling as if she had been subjected to an immense wave of malice. This was clearly meant to make her perform like a court musician. Treating her as nothing more than an object for others' amusement, she looked toward Shen Yanxuan as if pleading for help, only to see him lower his gaze and continue drinking, as if he hadn't heard a thing. Under the scorching gazes of the crowd, she bit her lip in humiliation until it bled, moving to the qin table as if being driven. Her fingers trembled violently as she plucked the strings, producing a jarring, discordant sound that was completely out of tune. With a sharp twang, the qin string snapped in response. She jerked her hand back, her fingertip cut by the sharp broken string, beads of blood welling up. She stared blankly at the broken string, then looked up anxiously at her surroundings, her heart aching with bitterness. Someone couldn't hold back their laughter, which soon sparked a wave of snickers and disdain. "TSK, if you didn't want to play, you could have just said so. Why force yourself to produce such an unbearable noise? You've only ruined everyone's mood for nothing." "Exactly. You've not only wasted the princess's prized Jiaowei qin but also offended our ears. If I had known it would be like this, I might as well have hired musicians from outside. At least their tunes would be somewhat pleasant to the ear." Shen Yanxuan finally lifted his gaze, his cold and fierce dark eyes fixed on her, chilling to the bone. "Enough. If you can't play well, then stop. What are you doing standing there making a fool of yourself? You're nothing but a nuisance. Get out of here." She raised her head, meeting Shen Yanxuan's disgusted gaze, her eyes brimming with tears. If it were before, who would dare to humiliate the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister like this? But now, with the new emperor in power, Prime Minister Qiu's influence has greatly diminished, and he can no longer control everything as he once did. And she herself, because of what happened back then, has long been disgraced among the noble ladies' circle. For years, she has lowered herself and acted with gentle affection, just to catch his attention, gradually wearing down her own spirit. I watched coldly as she endured the humiliation in silence, thinking back to the proud and radiant Miss Qiu from 3 years ago, and felt nothing but irony in my heart. Brother Yanxuan and I are so fated. If you hadn't gotten in the way, he would have only fallen for me. I really don't know what Brother Yanxuan sees in you. Your family background is inferior to mine. Your talents are no match for mine. All you have is that seductive face of yours, bewitching the young masters of noble families. A woman as fickle and faithless as you is simply unworthy of him. Go far away, disappear from Brother Yanxuan and me, and never return to the capital for the rest of your life." There was a time when she was doted on by her father and brothers, spoiled and willful, even when she used the most despicable means to climb into Shen Yanxuan's bed. She could still hold her head high and show not a shred of remorse when facing me, the victim. Now that she has fallen to the point where she endures ridicule without daring to retort, does she regret scheming so meticulously to force me to leave the capital back then? My husband, Qiu Shuizi, awkwardly returned to Shen Yanxuan's side, timidly calling out his name as she reached out to tug at his sleeve. Shen Yanxuan, however, abruptly pulled away as if avoiding something filthy. His gaze toward me grew increasingly fervent, his voice hoarse. Yao Yao, please show some restraint, Your Highness, your wife is still watching. I glanced sideways and indeed saw the pain surfacing in Qiu Shuizong's eyes. Shen Yanxuan's eyes were filled with pleading. May I have a word in private? I let out a light laugh and tilted my head slightly. Does the heir apparent think there is anything left for us to say? Even though I knew that just a single ambiguous word at this moment could make Qiu Shuizi suffer unbearably, but I cherish my reputation and don't want to do that. It's too cheap, and it tarnishes the 3 years of patience and planning I've endured. My revenge is not as simple as stealing a man. In the end, I've always thought Qiu Shuizi was foolish. If a deceased white moonlight is a sure kill, then a white moonlight forced to leave for a distant land, how could it not leave one longing and unforgettable? The banquet was halfway through. Qiu Shuizi quietly huddled in a corner, her gaze fixed intently on me, who was being showered with attention. She didn't understand. It's been 3 years already. So why is everyone's gaze still following me? Those noble ladies surround me, chatting and laughing, as close to me as ever, as if I had never left the capital. Could it be that 3 years of time couldn't erase the fond memories everyone has of me? Even her husband still can't forget me. At this thought, she felt as if her heart were being pierced by a knife. The imperial decree has arrived. Everyone hurriedly left their seats and knelt down in a flurry. I, too, prepared to kneel down along with the others. The eunuch delivering the imperial decree stepped forward quickly, smiling as he gave me a symbolic hand of support. Miss Jiang. There is no need for such formalities. His Majesty has specifically instructed that you may receive the decree standing. The people around us looked on in astonishment. I lowered my gaze, understanding clearly in my heart, this was his way of showing his support for me in front of everyone. By the decree of heaven and the mandate of the emperor, it is proclaimed, Jiang Shiyao, daughter of Jiang Mingyuan, Minister of Revenue, has rendered meritorious service in disaster relief in Jiangnan. She is hereby granted the title of Minghua County Mistress, bestowed with 100 taels of gold and 10 bolts of brocade. So ordered. After the imperial edict was read, I received it with both hands, recalling the bold words in that person's letter before returning to the capital. I couldn't help but let a smile curve my eyes. Your subject's daughter receives the decree and offers thanks for this grace. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Qiu Shuizi's pale face and Shen Yanxuan's shocked gaze. A cold laugh rose within my heart. Princess Jiahe was the first to step forward to offer congratulations, her smile as radiant as a flower. Yao Yao, now we should address you as the county princess. How did this come about? I smiled faintly and explained. During the flood in Jiangnan, I saw the plight of the refugees and felt pity for them. So I donated some silver and provisions for disaster relief. I also assisted the government in resettling the refugees and building dams. I never expected His Majesty to remember it, Qiu Shuizi said in disbelief. Impossible. You, a woman who was driven out of the capital, in such a dangerous place like Jiangnan. I cast a cold glare at her. Yes. Back then the Jiangnan region was plagued by floods, with corpses of the starved lying everywhere and bandits running rampant. Why did your Qiu family insist on sending me to such a dangerous place? Jiangnan was prosperous, with misty willows and painted bridges, apricot blossoms, and drizzling rain. Under normal circumstances, it would indeed have been a pleasant destination. But at that time, Jiangnan was ravaged by floods, epidemics were rampant, and bandits were running wild. As a weak woman, if I hadn't chosen the right path, how could I have stayed safe in that living hell? The Qiu family was determined to break me there. They hoped I would be abducted by villains and have my reputation ruined. Even if I managed to return to the capital unscathed, after a few years, I would have become an old maid no one cared about. The ones who come to seek my hand in marriage are either the dregs of society or those wanting me to be a stepmother or fill the role of a second wife. The Cho family truly has a clever plan up their sleeve." Her face pale, she shook her head in panic. "No, it's not like that, I didn't mean to," Shen Yenshuan said with disgust. "Enough, if you've done it, you've done it. Why pretend to be innocent?" He finished speaking and, without waiting for Cho Shuizi, turned and walked away, not even sparing her a single glance. Princess Jiahe sneered. "Some people go to great lengths to snatch things that will never warm to them, only to end up hurting themselves." Another noblewoman covered her mouth with a light laugh. "Ah, isn't that the truth? After all, it's a marriage she snatched. No matter how unbearable it is. It's a consequence of her own actions, she'll have to endure it for the rest of her life, even if she has to kneel through it." Cho Shuizi clenched her fists tightly. She glanced at me, surrounded by the crowd, then looked at Shen Yenshuan, who had left without a backward glance, and stumbled as she rushed after him. Princess Jiahe pretended to be helpless and complained, "Ah, why did she run away? She hasn't paid for my broken chin yet." After the flower viewing banquet, I returned to the Jiang residence. My father, mother, and elder sister stood on the steps, their eyes brimming with tears as they looked at me. "Back is good, back is good. My dear Yarrow Yarrow has suffered." My heart ached with bitterness, but I feigned lightness and cheerfulness, coaxing them into beaming with joy. The next day, I had to go to the palace to express my gratitude. The carriage wheels came to a halt halfway, stopped by someone. I lifted my hand to pull aside the curtain slightly. It was Cho Shuesong. Behind him stood Cho Shuizi, her face haggard, her head slightly bowed, looking utterly aggrieved. I raised an eyebrow. It seemed she had once again brought her brother to settle the score for her. Cho Shuesong affectionately patted his younger sister's head and said softly, "Don't worry, your brother is here to handle everything." Then, he looked up at me, a faint smile curling at the corners of his lips. "Miss Jiang." "It's been a while." I remained seated in the carriage, showing no intention of getting out, and replied indifferently, "Mr. Cho, what brings you to stop my carriage in the middle of the street?" Cho Shuizi stared at me with red, swollen eyes, her voice trembling with tears. "Jiang Xiao, why have you come back? Do you intend to ruin my marriage and rekindle your past with Brother Yenshuan? Let me make it clear, don't even think about it. Brother Yenshuan is my husband now. We've exchanged vows before heaven and earth. We are a rightful, recognized couple. No matter how unwilling you are, no matter how you try to seduce him, you will only remain a hidden mistress, unseen in the light. Even if you somehow manage to enter the Marquis's estate, you would still be nothing but a lowly concubine." Such vulgar insults, paired with her delicate, tear-streaked appearance, made it seem as though I were the one bullying her. Cho Shuesong frowned and pretended to scold. "Shuizi, don't be rude," yet his eyes clearly held indulgence, and he even turned to me and said, "Miss Jiang, my sister is straightforward by nature. I hope you'll forgive her. However, what she said is not without reason. Since you've already left the capital, why come back and stir up trouble?" I quietly watched the siblings play off each other and suddenly smiled. I lifted the carriage curtain and jumped down nimbly, striding over to Cho Shuesong in a few steps. Cho Shuesong was momentarily stunned by my sudden, imposing approach. Smack! I slapped Cho Shuesong hard across the face. "Brother!" Cho Shuizi exclaimed in shock, rushing over to check on Cho Shuesong's face. I didn't even glance at her, and with a backhanded slap, I struck Cho Shuizi's face hard. Smack! Cho Shuizi was stunned, and it took a moment before she covered her face and screamed, You dare hit us." I shook my slightly numb wrist and sneered, "I've wanted to slap them for 3 years." Cho Shuesong finally snapped back to reality, his eyes blazing with fury. "What do you mean you? I hit you. So what? Do I need to pick a special day for it?" "Jiang Xiao," Cho Shuesong gritted his teeth, "you assaulted the son of a court official in public. I will surely impeach your father for failing to properly educate his daughter." I let out a scornful laugh and glanced up at the sky. "Feel free to file your impeachment, Lord Cho. However, I am due at the palace today to express my gratitude for the imperial favor. If I am delayed and His Majesty holds it against us, can your Cho family bear the consequences?" I watched with satisfaction as Cho Shuasong's face turned from red to green, then from green to pale. He gritted his teeth tightly. Not daring to utter any more threats, I let out a cold snort, no longer looking at the wretched siblings, and turned to board the carriage. The carriage curtain fell. And the carriage started moving again, compared to 3 years ago, when I was secretly brought into the palace by the hidden guards in the dead of night. This time, the palace gates swung wide open, and the eunuch in attendance greeted me outside, leading me openly and honorably along the palace path. 3 years ago, when I was forced to leave the capital, I was indeed filled with resentment, but after calming down, I came to understand, rather than wallowing in self-pity. It's better to make those who harmed me pay the price. At that time, the floods in Jiangnan were severe, and the court took the matter very seriously. They allocated substantial disaster relief funds, but the money seemed to vanish without a trace, and the situation only worsened. My intuition told me there was something deeply suspicious going on. The official in charge of Jiangnan happened to be a favored protege of Minister Qiu, but as a mere woman, how could I possibly challenge the colossal power entrenched in Jiangnan? In a moment of desperation, I thought of that warm, smooth jade pendant. It had been secretly sent by Xie Chen once. Many years ago, he was still the 6th prince in the palace. His status was awkward, his birth mother lowly, and even his allotted food was often withheld. I followed my mother into the palace for a banquet and accidentally came across a young boy curled up behind a rockery, starving, feeling pity. I quietly took some pastries from the palace banquet and slipped them to him. He froze, looking at me warily, but eventually snatched the pastries and devoured them ravenously. From then on, whenever I occasionally entered the palace, I always found a way to bring him some non-perishable food. We rarely spoke, yet there was a certain understanding between us. Later, like a dormant dragon lying in wait, he ascended the throne amidst a storm of bloodshed. Not long after his enthronement, he sent someone to deliver a jade pendant, saying, "Should you ever find yourself in difficulty, you may use this token to seek me out." I took the jade pendant and went to a seemingly ordinary tavern, a hidden outpost he had left behind. Not long after, I was secretly brought into the imperial palace. The hall was brightly lit by candlelight, and the young emperor sat solemnly behind the imperial desk. He lifted his gaze to look at me, his voice low and deep. "The matter of the Qiu family, I am already aware. I once said that with this jade pendant, I would grant you one promise. Now that you have come bearing the pendant, is it to ask me to intervene and resolve the predicament of your Jiang family? Does your Majesty wish to send guards to ensure Minister Jiang's safety and secure his official career, or does your Majesty intend to promote his position to strengthen his influence?" He paused, then added meaningfully, "Or, do you wish to enter the palace and become the empress?" I was so startled I nearly bit my tongue, unable to comprehend why he would consider this last point. His Majesty has yet to take a wife, and the rear palace remains empty. The court is embroiled in endless disputes over the matter of establishing an empress. In such a situation, it's either that one is incapable, or their heart belongs to another. How could I dare to aspire to the position of empress? I immediately shook my head and knelt down, replying, "Your Majesty, it is neither." "Oh," he seemed somewhat surprised, leaning forward slightly. "Then what do you want?" "I beseech your Majesty to grant me permission to journey to Jiangnan." "Jiangnan?" His eyebrows lifted slightly. "The floods in Jiangnan have yet to subside. It is hardly a suitable place for leisure at the moment. The Qiu family sent you here with malicious intent. Are you truly willing to walk right into their trap?" "That is precisely why I must go." I lifted my head, my gaze burning as I met his scrutinizing eyes. "I am willing to pledge my loyalty to your Majesty. To go to Jiangnan and uncover evidence of Chancellor Qiu's embezzlement of disaster relief funds and his formation of cliques for personal gain. With just you," he smiled faintly, as if amused. "Just me, a woman." I did not flinch. "The Qiu family sent me, a mere woman, to Jiangnan because they believed a weak woman like me couldn't stir up any trouble. They look down on women, and that is their greatest weakness." As the words fell, the imperial study fell into complete silence. I felt a burning gaze fixed on me and couldn't help but nervously clutch my sleeves. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps began, gradually drawing closer. A furry head appeared in my lowered line of sight. Startled, I lost my balance and fell to the ground. Looking up in astonishment to finally see the appearance of this emperor, his features were exquisitely beautiful, with eyebrows like ink paintings and eyes as cold as stars. The bright yellow dragon robe made his face appear even more handsome, like jade. At this moment, he was half crouched in front of me, tilting his head slightly, a few strands of his dark hair falling down, watching my disheveled state with great interest. "I have acted improperly, Your Majesty. I beg for your forgiveness." I hurriedly pleaded for mercy, yet he smiled, his eyes curving as he reached out to help me up, his fingertips warm. Stunned, he looked at my frightened and unsettled expression, a hint of mischief glinting in his eyes. I flustered and lowered my gaze. He withdrew his hand and let out a light laugh. "What you seek, I grant. I will dispatch a team of trusted personnel to accompany and ensure your safety, guaranteeing your well-being in Jiangnan. Proceed with confidence. I await your good news here in the capital." As my thoughts settled, I found myself already at the imperial study. Xie Chen, seeing me just a few steps away, quickened his pace only to halt abruptly, across that neither too long nor too short distance. His gaze deepened as he softly called out, "A Yao." This sound seemed to instantly break the distance that had been built over 3 years of correspondence. During those 3 years in Jiangnan, most of the letters in the residence were sent by him. The letters initially contained official and businesslike confidential reports, with every word reflecting the emperor's calmness and strategic planning. Later, they began to include snippets of daily life and interesting anecdotes from the capital. Finally, those words became lingering and scorching, like the continuous spring rain of the Jiangnan region. He even had the audacity to come to Jiangnan. All because I casually mentioned how exceptionally beautiful the peach blossoms were there. It was simply reckless, a dignified ruler of a nation, risking his safety to leave the capital just to see a few peach blossoms. I was so furious I nearly called him a tyrant in public, but when I met his smiling eyes, I could only grit my teeth and hide him in my temporary residence, terrified of being discovered. To this day, I still don't understand how things ended up like this. Those letters carried by wild geese, how did they eventually turn the bond between ruler and subject into such an indescribable sentiment? "Your Majesty." I lowered my gaze and was about to bow when he suddenly stepped forward, gripping my wrist firmly, a hint of displeasure in his eyes. His thumb gently stroked my slightly reddened palm. "Does your hand hurt?" My palm was tickled by his rubbing, and I instinctively tried to pull my hand back, but he held it even tighter. After tugging a couple of times without success, I simply let him have his way. Xie Chen turned and ordered the palace attendants to fetch some medicine, then pulled me to sit on the soft couch and personally applied the ointment for me. "There's no need to do it yourself." His phoenix eyes held a hint of indulgence and helplessness. "If you want to hit someone, just have the maids do it for you." I couldn't help but laugh. Only by doing it myself will I feel satisfied. However, tomorrow, the memorials from Chancellor Qiu's faction accusing me of arrogance and tyranny will likely pile up on your imperial desk. Xie Chen looked up at me, his eyes shimmering with a faint, teasing smile. "I knew you would say that." He gently released my hand and stood up, his eyes filled with an inviting temptation and anticipation. "Tomorrow at the morning court, you should come too. Stand personally in the Hall of Golden Chimes, present their crimes with your own hands, and seek justice for yourself and the people." All right, I was slightly taken aback, although from our 3 years of correspondence, I had long known he was not the kind of rigid and conservative ruler. He appreciated my wisdom and tacitly allowed me to lay my plans in Jiangnan, but to let a woman step into the Hall of Golden Chimes, the very heart of supreme power, and personally participate in the impeachment of the current prime minister, was he not afraid of the historian's harsh judgments, or the criticism of the people? But this temptation is far too great. It's not about hiding in the shadows to gather evidence, nor is it about using others to bring down my enemies. Instead, it's about standing upright in the light, declaring their crimes, and personally putting an end to this grudge. The desire for personal vengeance burned in my chest, and I heard my own voice say, "Yes, Xie Chen smiled, like the first thaw of ice and snow, the sudden break of spring waters. His handsome features relaxed, the curve of his lips genuine. In that moment, it was as if he had shed all the depth of an emperor and reverted to the youth behind the rockery, the one whose eyes had flashed with light when he accepted my pastries. He suddenly leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "I await your sweeping victory tomorrow." A warm breath brushed past the tip of my ear, making my earlobes heat up instantly. I jerked backward abruptly, nearly tumbling off the soft couch. Xie Chen swiftly caught me by the waist, letting out a low chuckle. "What are you hiding from? It's not like I'm going to eat you." Afterward, he insisted I stay in the palace for a meal, across from me. His gaze carried a scorching intensity, almost tangible as it lingered on my face and body. "I can't eat any more of this meal." I felt as if sitting on pins and needles, hurriedly took a few bites. Then excused myself, claiming there were matters to attend to at the residence. Xie Chen didn't stop me, but as I turned to leave, he casually remarked, "Ah Yao, remember to wear your county princess court attire tomorrow." I paused in my steps, responded softly, and then quickly walked away without looking back. It could almost be described as a hasty escape. The next day at the morning court, Minister Chiu indeed impeached my father for failing to properly educate his daughter. Minister Chiu's supporters swarmed in, echoing his sentiments one after another. What's more, they even urged His Majesty to retract his decree, strip me of my county princess title, and set the record straight. Father immediately retorted sarcastically, "If we're talking about failing to teach one's daughter properly, who in the entire court of civil and military officials could surpass Chancellor Chiu?" "You, Chancellor Chiu," struck where it hurt, flushed red with anger, Jiang Mingyuan. "Don't you dare change the subject. Today we're discussing your daughter's act of violence in the streets. If the Chiu family hadn't gone too far in their bullying, how could my son have ended up like this?" Sophistry. In an instant, the Golden Luan Hall became a battlefield of words, with new grudges and old grievances. Officials from both factions argued until their faces were red and they were at a complete impasse. Seeing that the argument had gone on long enough, Xie Chen finally raised his hand slightly. The entire hall fell silent in an instant, announcing, "The County Princess of Minghua." The palace doors slowly opened, holding thick stacks of evidence of crimes. I stepped into the court for the first time as a woman. The morning sun just pierced through the clouds, stretching my shadow long and slender. Qiu Xiong was greatly alarmed and hurriedly knelt to block the way. "Your Majesty must not. The Golden Luan Hall is the sacred court of state affairs. How can a woman be allowed to enter without permission? A hen crowing at dawn signals the ruin of the household. This is an omen of a nation's downfall. Your Majesty." Xie Chen's eyes turned cold instantly. I sneered, "Why is Chancellor Chiu in such a hurry?" As I spoke, I knelt heavily and raised the case file high above my head. "I, your subject, have been ordered to thoroughly investigate the corruption case in Jiangnan. Here is solid evidence of Chancellor Chiu forming cliques for personal gain and embezzling disaster relief funds." I calmly and methodically presented the evidence. It was densely covered with records of how Minister Chiu had embezzled disaster relief funds and pocketed the silver allocated by the court for river embankment repairs. There were also confidential letters written in Minister Chiu's own hand, as well as notes in which he hinted to his protégés that I must be killed in Jiangnan. I engaged in a heated debate with the scholars and officials, definitively sealing Minister Chiu's guilt. The officials who had originally supported Minister Chiu turned pale, their faces drenched in cold sweat. "Minister Chiu, what do you have to say for yourself?" Xie Chen's eyes were icy as he threw the evidence of guilt directly at Minister Chiu's head. This is a frame-up, Your Majesty, a complete frame-up." Qiu Xiong looked at the familiar pieces of evidence, fell to his knees with a thud, and trembled all over like a sieve. "The evidence is conclusive, and the crime is unforgivable. Guards." Xie Chen ordered the search and seizure of the Prime Minister's residence. In just 2 hours, the Imperial Guards carried out hundreds of boxes of jewels, calligraphy, and paintings from the Chiu residence, not to mention the piles of gold ingots, far exceeding what Minister Chiu's official salary should have been, enough to rival the wealth of a nation. Minister Chou's face turned ashen as he collapsed to the ground, completely defeated. That very day, the entire Chou family was thrown into prison. The threats Chou Shuosong once made to me had finally come full circle, falling upon his own family, only Chou Shuotzi, because the disaster did not extend to married daughters, was able to remain safe. After the dust settled, my father began to worry about my marriage, although he had now been promoted to minister and was favored by the emperor. The malice the Chou family had shown back then had ultimately come true. Now, at 20 years old, I was considered an old maid among the noble ladies of the capital. Father sifted through the eligible young masters from noble families in his mind over and over again. Either they were already betrothed, or they lacked talent and virtue. Not a single one could meet his standards. Father grew worried and couldn't help but pour out his troubles to the Minister of Rites, who had come to drink tea and play chess with him. Minister Ju, perhaps aware of some inside information, couldn't resist smiling and hinting, "Brother Jiang, the course of true love never did run smooth. In my humble opinion, your niece's blessings are yet to come." Father looked bewildered, somewhat at a loss, then remembered that the Minister of Rites had a young son who was as elegant and refined as an orchid and jade tree. He suddenly understood. Could it be? Both thought the other had grasped the situation, and they began to chat freely. After Minister Ju left, Father came to me excitedly to ask my opinion. I found it both laughable and frustrating, and told him straight out that he was overthinking it. These two people were talking about completely different things. That night, I wrote about this incident as an amusing anecdote in my letter to the palace. Unexpectedly, shortly after the secret letter was sent, there came a very light tap from outside the window. He leaned casually against the window frame, his strikingly handsome features appearing even more indolent and charming in the candlelight, watching me with a faint, ambiguous smile. I helplessly rubbed my forehead. As the Son of Heaven, sneaking into your subject's daughter's bedchamber at night, what would people think if word got out? Xie Chen chuckled softly, climbed in through the window, and very naturally took my hand, his fingertips lightly tracing patterns on my palm. If I keep up the imperial dignity any longer, my future wife might be promised to someone else by her father. Yao, tell me, shouldn't I be anxious? His straightforward and shameless words made me blush deeply. I tried to pull my hand back, but he only held it tighter. He toned down his playful demeanor, his phoenix eyes growing profound. Yao, I came today to ask you one thing. Your Majesty, please speak. He said something astonishing. Yao, will you be my empress? I grant you the position of queen, desiring that we stand side by side, ruling the kingdom together. I allow you to establish a system of female officials, so that talented and learned women can also stand in the court and make their voices heard. Yao, do you think that 1,000 years from now, women in this world will truly be able to stand openly in the court, equal in status to men, and discuss state affairs together? I believe it is possible. Since it can be done, why not let us be the pioneers to make it happen? This vision is so beautiful that for a moment, my heart is captivated and my thoughts wander. I am a man, and no matter how many ideas I may have, there are some things I can never truly understand from a woman's perspective. Yao, you are different. You have experienced the injustices this world imposes on women. You know best what we should fight for and what we should change for women. If I hadn't met you, I originally intended to have the imperial physician fabricate a story about my inability to have children and adopt an heir from the imperial clan. So, between us, there was never any question of having a harem. What do you think? He took my hand and gently placed a kiss upon it. Yao, would you be willing to become my empress? To join me in forging a path never before seen in all of history? The candlelight crackled, illuminating his exceptionally earnest face. After what happened with Shen Yenshuan, I no longer believed in promises of a lifetime with one and only person. But this time, I dare to bet. I bet on his sincerity, on his promises, and even more so, on myself. Even if one day the emperor's favor fades, I will still hold the power he has granted me, and behind me stands the support of women across the land. By then, I will no longer be a dodder vine clinging to others, so why should I fear the storms? Moreover, In this era where women are only expected to manage the household and raise children, how fortunate it is to encounter such a nonconformist who is willing to break the shackles for you. No one could ever be more in tune with my soul than him. The light in his eyes was too intense. I instinctively reached out and gently covered his captivating phoenix-like eyes. Xie Chen. I softly called his name. You truly are a master of temptation. Beneath my palm, his eyelashes gently brushed against my skin, bringing a faint tickle. The tickle reached all the way to my heart. So, he asked in a low, husky voice, flirtatious yet subtle, has a Yao been tempted by me? I lowered my hand, met his brightening gaze, and curved the corners of my lips. Yes, the Chiu family was sentenced to execution in the autumn. On the day of the execution, I personally went to see them off. Through the crowd of outraged citizens, I saw Chiu Shuizi weeping uncontrollably. Beside her stood Shen Yanxuan, his expression filled with reluctance. When she saw me, it was as if she had grabbed onto her last lifeline. She stumbled and threw herself in front of me. Jiang Xiao, I beg you. They may have done terrible things, but they are my parents and my brother. You have parents too. If it were you, could you bear to watch them imprisoned and executed? She was crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. I'm begging you, let them go. I know you hate me for taking Shen Yanxuan. Just say the evidence is fake, and I'll give him up. I'll step down and return him to you. Alright, let them go. I lowered my gaze and slowly pried her hands away. If I let them go, then I ask you, who will let go of the millions of people in Jiangnan who starved to death without disaster relief grain? My gaze passed through her. As if I could see the tragic scene of Jiangnan back then, corpses piled up, cries of suffering filled the wilderness, and people resorted to exchanging children to eat. It took me years to restore Jiangnan to its former beauty and vitality. After all, in your heart, the lives of the common people are worth less than those of your few relatives. They embezzled funds and provisions meant to save lives, their hands stained with the blood of the innocent. If you still have even a shred of understanding of right and wrong, if you know they deserve their punishment, you wouldn't be groveling before me now. You'd be better off saving your energy to say a few parting words to them and see them off on their final journey. And one more thing, don't drag my parents into this. My father and mother have lived their lives with integrity and compassion, unlike your Chiu family, who feed off the people's wealth and treat their lives as worthless. To be honest, I don't hate you for taking Shen Yanxuan away from me. He's just a man. There are countless young masters in the capital who admire me. What I truly hate is that you sent your brother to force me, keeping me from reuniting with my family for 3 years. Chiu Shuizi trembled all over from my words. Her last shred of hope shattered. She turned and clutched Shen Yanxuan's sleeve tightly. Husband, please save my parents. For the sake of the time I saved your life back then in the snow. I was the one who carried you out of the snowdrift. Have you forgotten? Shen Yanxuan was taken aback by the words. Wasn't it Yao Yao who saved me? Chiu Shuizi instantly glared at me with a twisted expression, her face filled with venomous resentment. It was you. No wonder Brother Yanxuan likes you. So it was you who stole my act of saving his life. You pretended to be me. Only then did I suddenly recall that snowy night many years ago. Back then, I was returning to the capital with my mother from my maternal grandparents' home when we came across an unconscious man and woman and saved them. The mother recognized the identities of the two and sent them back to their respective homes. Afterward, the Marquis of Dingyuan sent generous gifts, while the Prime Minister's residence made no gesture in return. I suddenly found it amusing. Had it not been for me, they would have frozen to death in the bitter cold. So, how could there be any question of impersonation? Seeing Shen Yanxuan's expression gradually soften towards Chiu Shuizi, I laid out the events of that year in full. I asked him, do you only acknowledge Chiu Shuizi's kindness in saving you, but not my efforts in escorting you all the way? Shen Yanxuan looked conflicted, and in the end, he actually cupped his hands toward me. Yao Yao, for the sake of our past affection, could you? I interrupted him with a cold laugh. What affection do I still share with you? Shen Yanxuan, in your eyes, does saving someone mean you must love them? But over the years, I've done countless good deeds and saved no less than 1,000 people. Does that mean every one of them should fall in love with me? How could I possibly bear such a burden? Are you treating the imperial court as a child's game? Ignoring right and wrong, disregarding laws and principles, all for the sake of your ridiculous notions of love? Shen Yanxuan turned deathly pale, rendered utterly speechless by my rebuke. The hour has come, carry out the execution. Qiu Shuizi let out a heart-wrenching, desperate wail. Watching helplessly as the executioner raised his blade and brought it down, her heart turned to ashes as she looked at the man beside her, the one she had once been willing to do anything to win over, and spoke with profound sorrow. Shen Yanxuan, I regret it. I regret ever falling in love with you. She smiled bitterly, tears once again streaming down her face. If it weren't for you, I would still be that proud and radiant young lady. But now, everyone in the capital looks down on me, and you have cast me aside like a worn-out shoe. Her voice grew softer, carrying an endless desolation. Yet at home, I was once doted on, the cherished pearl in the palms of my parents and brothers. I had no interest in their heart-wrenching, tragic love, so I turned and walked away. Years later, in Fengyi Palace, I suddenly recalled the past and told Xie Chen about what happened at the execution ground as casual conversation. After hearing it, a look of disdain appeared on his strikingly handsome face, and he clicked his tongue, saying, "What a melodramatic mess." I looked up at him. Xie Chen always had a knack for coming up with novel and fitting phrases. He chuckled, leaned in, and pulled me into his embrace, gently rubbing his chin against the top of my head as he explained, "What I mean is, if this kind of plot were in a storybook, the white moonlight who takes credit for others' efforts would surely meet a terrible end, while the main characters would endure a love full of twists and turns. Even with a sea of blood and hatred between them, they would still share a lifetime of affection." As he spoke, he planted a kiss in my hair. Fortunately, Yao is clever and abandoned that Shen Yanxuan early, taking revenge with her own hands. Such an ending is worthy of my Yao. What about you? My heart stirred slightly as I looked up at him, a playful glint in my eyes. You treated me so well back then. Was it because of the kindness from those pastries? Ouch. Before the words had even fully left my mouth, he lightly tapped my forehead with a bent knuckle. "You little ingrate," he feigned anger, glaring at me. "I'm a stingy man. What I promised you back then was nothing more than a single pledge. It is Yao's own determination that has step by step brought her into my heart, to this pinnacle of the world." He cupped my face, his deep phoenix eyes shining like a river of stars. "Yao, I am forever captivated by the brilliance and talent of your soul. It has nothing to do with gratitude. Only with you, the one and only Jiang Xiao." In the years that followed, with his unreserved support, I, like a flower nourished by power, bloomed with an unprecedented radiance and brilliance. In the very end, it was the two sages ruling together, jointly governing the world. On his deathbed, Xie Chen grasped my hand and said, "Yao, I really wish I could meet you in my world in the next life." His world. I look forward to it. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.